This is a natural dietary supplement extract from tropical sorghum bicolor, researched, refined and confirmed as a powerful antioxidant. It will increase your blood to required levels and boost your immune system rapidly. Jobelyn improves the fertility rate in both men and women. Jobelyn protects and provides energy for mother and child all through pregnancy and at childbirth. Jobelyn purifies your blood. It deters and effectively controls chronic heart diseases and blood-related conditions. Daily intake of Jobelyn protects the body from infections and guarantees a healthy and happy family. Jobelyn has no known adverse effects. Produced by Health Forever Products Limited, Dikpeolu Street off Obafemi Awolowo Way, Ikeja, Lagos, Nigeria. Available in sachets and capsules for adults and syrup for children in all leading pharmaceuticals nationwide. Consult your physician for prescription.
30 capsule Jobelyn now comes in a new pack.
Live healthy. Live Jobelyn.
Blood is the fluid of life. It contains all the ingredients to sustain and nourish life. Whenever its quantity or quality is insufficient, the medical world will instantly intervene with the transfusion of whole blood or with transfusion of any of the blood's components. The transfused blood could be own blood or blood from another individual, donated and stored in a solution containing citrate to prevent clotting. It also contains glucose, phosphate and adrenaline for optimal ATP regeneration and thus for longevity of the blood. Blood transfusions have the potential for many harmful side effects and should never be given when the risk to the patient outweigh the expected benefit or when safer therapy, e.g. Jobelyn, iron B12 VIT is available. Attempts should always be made to transfuse only blood components which the patient requires.
The fluid of life is called blood. It flows in our veins, it flows in our arteries, it's pumped around by the heart, which I call the natural pumping machine of the human body, which makes sure that this wonderful, this exceptionally fluid that carries the contents of life goes through the whole body. Unfortunately, there are times when this blood, quantity-wise, is not enough. Therefore, we have to take blood from other sources and pass it to the human body to enable this quantity of blood to be sufficient. Blood transfusion is in fact the transplantation, the transportation from one source, that is from a human body or from a container that contains the blood, through an operation during which a pipe is introduced into the veins of another human being, and this blood is passed from the source, from the container, to the new human being. So basically, I will define blood transfusion as the transplantation, because blood, in fact, is a tissue. It's a tissue, and when you transplant, you transport one tissue from one individual to another individual. We call it transplantation of blood. But in normal and, of course, colloquial language, we say transfusion of blood. This can be someone's own blood that has been taken and stored away for a while and then reintroduced to that individual. This is called the autologous. That is your same blood being retransplanted into you. Or it can be heterologous. That is from blood from another individual to a new individual. That is heterologous. Any one of these will do. And the indications are there for us to see. Now the question is, why do we transfuse blood? Oh, many reasons. The important thing is that the blood in an individual is not enough. the contents of the blood that keeps the human being alive is insufficient. So, for example, in cases of emergencies, for road traffic accidents, or during some long surgeries, the patient loses a lot of blood, so it needs to be transfused. There are some people who suffer from a disease called hemophilia. They bleed a lot. This is a type of bleeding disorder, and because of this reason, they need to take fresh blood often and often. So hemophiliacs need to take blood. For example, after dialysis. Dialysis is a process when the kidney of the individual does not function well, cannot cleanse the blood, and therefore his blood has to be passed through a dialysing machine which does the job of a kidney by removing all the poisons that it can and then reintroducing the blood into the human body. Don't forget, this occurs, which means the blood flows through a lot of plastic pipes, a lot of machines, and during this process, a lot of the red blood cells are destroyed. Therefore, quite often, very often, we see situations that after dialysis, the patient becomes very anemic. That is, a lot of red blood cells are destroyed and therefore needs to be transfused with fresh blood. After chemotherapy and radiotherapy, these are the treatments that people with cancer go through. Chemotherapy using chemical substances and radiotherapy using some radioactive rays to kill the cancer cells. When you're killing these cancer cells with chemicals or with radioactive substances, unfortunately, the normal red blood cells are also destroyed. And thereafter, after these treatments, one needs to transfuse them. For example, we also do things called bone marrow transplantation in leukemia patients. You know, leukemia patients have blood cells that are never mature and therefore cannot do the job that they are meant to do. And therefore, quite often, you need to introduce into these people some types of cells, the white blood cells especially, and sometimes the red blood cells, that can perform the normal functions of red blood cells and white blood cells. And since their own white blood and red blood cells are not mature enough, these need to be transfused from a heterologous source. For example, malnourished children, HIV/AIDS patients, especially when the state of AIDS has been attained, septicemic, in cases of septicemia, the infection has destroyed a lot of the red blood and white blood cells, resulting in severe anemia, and in cases of severe malaria, when the malaria parasite has destroyed so much of these red blood cells, you need to substitute. You need to increase the quantity of the red blood cell. That, of course, definitely will be insufficient. Not only in such cases when the blood quantity is not enough, but there are cases where, for example, we need to introduce some components of blood, be it only the white blood cells, be it only the platelets, to aid clotting factors. We need to give just only those components. We may need some white blood cells, and in those cases, you order, the doctor orders for only white blood cells. And there are some cases where you have these platelets, in cases of hemophilia, like I've mentioned, where some factors, some clotting factors are required, and only those particular components of blood are transfused. And of course, I have to say this. In the olden days, I would say in the olden days, but thanks a lot to the Lagos State government, where the transfusion of blood is not done anyhow now. It's got to go through specified process. There have been some very stupid colleagues who, in order to make some little money, have gone ahead and transfused blood just to make some extra nairas. We very much fight against such things and pray that it doesn't happen.
The human blood contains very many, yet undetectable particles and substances. Even the surface of all blood cells and plasma proteins contain very large number of substances that could cause allergic reactions or disease in the recipient. More than 300 different substances that could cause reactions have been identified in human RBCs. In addition to these, over 24 diseases causing germs are on record to have been inadvertently transfused to blood recipients. One wonders, How many HIV-infected blood was transfused before 1981, before the HIV particle was identified?
I will be very frank with you in discussing the problems that could afflict the human body, the human organism, with the transfusion of blood. Let me just mention a little something. By 1981, it was discovered that a microorganism, a virus called HIV, was around town. That means that in 1980, no one knew of its existence. They could not confirm it. Yet, it must have been around. And blood was freely transfused in 1980. Can you imagine the quantity of HIV that had been transfused without knowledge of it being transfused? Well, the American Medical Association has compiled just a few of those infections that could inadvertently be transfused along with blood. One, if not identified in time, or if the ability to test for these microorganisms that cause these diseases is not available at that point in time. Let's start by talking about, mentioning HIV/AIDS, because at time they were not capable of discovering it. We have the hepatitis group, the hepatitis virus group, the hepatitis A, B, C, E. Quite often we don't have the wherewithal to check for them in the blood to be transfused. Malaria parasites, if you are not capable of identifying them, you can inadvertently transfuse it, even though in some places they try their best to check out and rule out malaria before giving this blood transfusion. There is a disease called the Chagas disease, which is found mostly in South America, especially in Brazil. We have babesiosis, and we have leishmaniasis, we have the simian foamy-virus. All these are viruses that have been discovered to have been inadvertently transfused in the United States of America. But check this out. Despite all what I've told you, there is a much more simpler way of substituting blood. That is, listen to this, you drink a lot of water, take Jobelyn every day, and within a couple of days, your hemoglobin and your PCV is up to kingdom come. Take my word of it. It works like magic. And of course, you can add your plasma expander, add your Jobelyn, your blood pressure will go high, your hemoglobin will increase, your PCV will improve. It has no side effects, and your results are out within a few days.